Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I thought I would answer one of the questions I got in the Q&A, or at least part of it, because I felt like it needed its own video. This is something that really needs more than a 2 to 3 minute clip to discuss a little bit, and that's the idea of instinctive training versus set programming and set numbers. So let me put on my +5 hat of weaponsmithing, work on skill at my crafting a little bit, and let's talk about this, because this is really and truly going to be a context dependent thing. Now for me, I technically train somewhat instinctively right now, but what people need to remember, I'm cutting, so I'm not really going to make much in the way of gains. I'm also a very advanced lifter with a lot of experience. Now a lot of people say, oh, you're not an advanced lifter, and it's always silly when people say stuff like that. What have you guys seen me lift on camera this year in my 40s? At the age of 41, you guys have seen me squat 485 multiple times, right? 485 to depth. You guys have seen me deadlift 575 with no belt. You guys have seen me pause close grip bench 335, dead hang chin-ups with 100 pounds of plates. Those numbers qualify as advanced. They absolutely qualify as an advanced lifter. When you look at any strength and conditioning chart, even if you're in your 20s, I did this at 41. So I am definitely an advanced lifter. So I'm in kind of a different situation than most people. And here's what I'm going to say with instinctive training in terms of numbers, because that's what I want to talk about, is things like rate of perceived exertion training, just kind of lifting what you feel that you can handle that day. Things like that, as opposed to running a set protocol, a set progression pattern written by someone else. So here's what that's going to come down to. It's going to depend on how advanced you are, and it's going to depend upon your ability to be objective with this stuff regarding your lifts. I'm going to say straight up, a novice lifter has no business at all doing anything other than something written by a coach in terms of their numbers. In other words, a novice lifter, people say, what do you mean by novice? Well, you could use the charts, but I'm going to say for most of you guys, if you're a healthy young man and you're not benching 2 plates aside, can't squat 3 plates aside, you can't deadlift 4 plates aside. In other words, you can't bench 225, squat 315, deadlift 405. You have no business doing instinctive training. You absolutely, under no circumstance, need to ever lift any amount of weight other than what's in a pre-prescribed program. Because you simply put do not have the experience or the strength base, or probably even your technique down enough on all of your lifts to give the feedback that you need personally to train in any manner other than set percentages, set numbers. And let's be realistic. And that's in your first year of serious training. I don't care if you've been goofing off in the gym for the past 15 years. If you have not actually trained, and again, you're below those numbers I just gave, if you've not ever actually trained on a set system using your entire body, using big lifts, then you're a novice. You're a novice. You don't have the practical experience to do so. When it comes to things like more instinctive training of coming in and saying, well, this is, I'm going to just try to lift this today. I'm going to go by feel. I'm going to do whatever number of 5 rep sets, and I'm just going to base them on feel. My feedback in myself, how fast the bar moves, to determine what sort of weight I'm going to put on the bar. You really and truly need at least 1, if not 2 years of experience under a set system of training, in my opinion, before you can possibly use something like this. Now, there are coaches out there who feel that no one should be doing this. That if your goal is to be perfect in terms of stimulating the best adaptation, you need to have a coach handling this for you. Now, a lot of people are going to say, well, you know, what about when you're having bad days and everything else? Well, the thing is, your bad days would be determined by a coach. In other words, if someone who's outside of you, because I mean, if you have experience, you can do this for yourself. You can technically coach yourself if you know how to account for all your lifestyle factors, if you know your recovery curve. If you understand the stress recovery adaptation cycle, you can program for yourself at a certain point. But outside of that, yeah, that is usually a coach's job. And that's what guys like Ripto will say. That's a coach's job to determine for you what they think you need to be lifting based upon their knowledge of working with individuals, programming, where you're at in your stress recovery adaptation cycle at any given point in the week, that a coach should be prescribing your numbers for you. And they need to be set numbers. You need to know before you get to the gym that you're going to squat 365 pounds for 3 sets of 5, right? You need to actually know that before you even get to the gym. And that's what someone like that would argue. Whereas, and there are other people like Mike Toucher, I'm going to get his name wrong. He, has devised a whole RPE system. And people need to understand when we're talking about, they're like, well, that's all just strength training. Well, strength and hypertrophy training are the same thing at a certain threshold. They really are. You can't separate the two. And progressive overload or progressive workload is a requirement for hypertrophy. So in other words, if your goal is to get as big as possible and you're not using drugs to facilitate that, you have to see an increase in performance. You have to increase workload on the muscle, whether it's in the form of tension, whether it's in the form of metabolic stress and volume. The thing is, you have to improve somewhere. If you do the exact same reps and sets with the same weights for a year straight on any given muscle, you're probably not going to grow after about the first month of that year. You're going to spend at least 11 months that year getting zero growth in that muscle, right? Unless drugs come into the mix. And then that's a different animal completely. So, that being said, this matters for hypertrophy purposes also, guys. This matters. This is not just strength training, because you cannot, and the data is showing that, you cannot separate strength and hypertrophy. Now, the difference between maximum strength, technique-related strength, changing range of motion strength, that can be different. And in some cases, certain training styles do seem to facilitate slightly more strength versus hypertrophy. But it's not like there's an enormous shift. In other words, there's not like there's a system of training out there to where you could literally gain 30% more strength in all those muscles with the same amount of growth, right? In other words, you can't do that. And you can't gain X amount of muscle and all the muscles related in the squat and have one person increase their squat by a certain amount that's 30% higher than the other guy who trained for hypertrophy. It doesn't work that way. There's an absolute performance element to it. It's something like 5 to 10% difference. In other words, if you gain X amount of muscle in every muscle in your body, the amount of strength you gain proportionate to it, irrespective of what training system you use, is only going to be about maybe at most a 10% difference in the strength gain. So the training for difference between strength and hypertrophy, yes, while there is a little bit of margin there, it's not that big. There's something in the range of a 90%, roughly 90% overlap. So you can't separate the two. So we need to think of it in those terms also. So I don't care what your training goals are for. If you are trying to create adaptation, generally speaking, only a handful of people are really equipped and have the tools in order to do anything that you would describe as an instinctive style or rate of perceived exertion style training. Now, a lot of people who might be listening to my channel, this is going to be a more biased audience because a lot of people here do have many years of lifting experience. I'm going to say at least, if I were to estimate, I bet at least half of my regular viewers, if not more, have more than 1 year of actual training experience under their belt, right? There's going to be a lot of novices in here too, but this is going to be a disproportionately skewed channel. And the new people within a year, every person who's new here who maybe might still be technically a novice, new to actual training, if they're around this channel for a year or two, then realistically, obviously, they're no longer going to be a novice also, because they're probably going to be running some sort of program. They're going to be thinking in terms of programming, training, progression, and doing a lot of big movements if they stick around this channel and find it entertaining enough to watch or informative enough to watch. So yeah, my audience might be skewed in regards to this. But the fact of the matter is, I'm going to be realistic here. Not a single novice out there needs to be training with any sort of instinctive training. I'm not saying you can't make gains. I'm saying they're going to be suboptimal gains. And I'm going to say in intermediate, they really need to be very, very careful in deciding if they are ready to train in an instinctive manner yet. Some intermediates might have the tools already to do so. Some might. A lot do not. So it's a very, very individual question. It's a very context-dependent thing. So it's going to depend upon the person. So the answer is really it depends. It depends. Alright guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.